Hello, my name is Chris Judy, and I'll be giving today's lecture for the World War II and Age of Decolonization class. This will be a brief overview of the topics that will be covered in Module 5. The topic for this module is decolonization in Africa and the Middle East. Looking at decolonization, I've kind of broken it down into three different points of why the countries wanted their independence from their colonial empires. The first one, World War II kind of eroded the foundations of the colonial rule, as Kennedy stated right there. And also, a lot of the colonial nations also required some of their people to fight in the militaries during World War II. And in Kennedy's book on page 30, he talks about in the campaign in North Africa, over 250,000 North Africans joined the invasions of Italy and France, and many of them were changed men and were impatient for economic opportunities and political rights. So really the soldiers got their taste of freedom, got the taste of a different world while they were fighting in World War II and helping with the colonial empires. Then that third one, you kind of see the foundations are eroded, and also the countries are seeking independence because of the harsh treatment that they saw under colonial power. One good example of that is in Congo. In Pashad's book, he talks about the use of force and brutal torture to try to increase productivity. And in page 17 of his book, it says, if a worker did not work, the officer would cut off the hand. In one district, an official received 1,308 hands in one day from his subordinates. So to me, that's kind of amazing that harsh treatment was going on, and it's no wonder that they wanted to get out from under that. When looking at the demands for states' independence from colonial rule, I want to break down the harsh treatment of the subjects under colonial rule a little more. An approach used during colonization called settler colonization is when colonies come in and wipes out the indigenous subjects to make way during the establishment of their colony. This was used in Africa and in the Middle East, and this concept and harsh treatment of the subjects in Congo resulted in half the population being murdered from 1885 to 1908. This created a desire for the Congo subjects to want more independence from Belgium. During the decolonization process, you also see this happening when nation states are trying to establish themselves. Some settler colonization occurred in Nigeria when they were conflicting against themselves within the regions. There's also an example of this in the Middle East with Palestine and Israel. In Kennedy's book, he gives an overview of how this settler colonization occurred. He stated that a similar crisis unfolded in post-war Palestine when the British failed to resolve the increasingly irretractable divide between the mandated territories for the Jewish settlers and the Arab residents, each demanding a nation-state of their own. As political order and public security disintegrated, the British announced their withdrawal from Palestine, handing over responsibility for resolving the crisis into the hands of the United Nations. So in this situation, we see the British giving up their colony due to the conflict arising and stemming from the settlement of the Jews coming back to their promised land and trying to form their own nation state after being persecuted during World War II. The Jewish used the settler colonization against the Palestinians as they were trying to create their new nation state. With the Middle East, we see decolonization occurring earlier. Their decolonization started with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, so they were further along in decolonization process than most of Africa. With the conclusion of World War II, this will help some Middle Eastern countries gain their independence. The Arab League was created by several countries who wanted to use the League to bring together the Arab-speaking countries to peacefully address conflicts and to develop social and economic ties. The Arab League's purpose, as stated by Prasad in his book, was created to strengthen the ties between the participating states, to coordinate their political programs in such a way as to effect real collaboration between them to preserve their independence. The Arab League helped Syria, Lebanon, Jordan to gain their independence from France after World War II. Because the Middle East was further along in decolonization, you see the use of the Leagues assisting other countries, whereas that is not seen as much in Africa, Africa is often left up to smaller tribal leaders to seek their independence. One of the other topics that we'll be going in depth to this week is neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is the control of a nation-state's economic structure and political influence, and this is often done by the ex-colonial ruler to the nation-state that recently gained their independence. We'll be doing a case study of this when reading Powell's article about Chad and seeing how France used neocolonialism. Through this week's readings and the case study of Congo, keep in mind how Belgium tried to control all the rich natural resources in Congo even after they gained their independence. All throughout Africa, many new nation states have resources that their old rulers seek, and we'll look in depth into the neocolonialism. We've already been talking about and reading about Congo a great deal this week. We'll do an in-depth look at the Congo conflict and how they gained their independence from Belgium. The conflict lasted from July 5th, 1960 to November 25th, 1965. Kind of to put it in perspective how much Congo wanted their independence, by the end of the conflict, an estimated 100,000 people lost their lives. Also this week, we're going to look at the Algerian War of Independence. This was one of the most violent uprisings during the decolonization era. As you read through the Darker Nations book and also Kennedy's book, look for the importance that came from this War of Independence. From Kennedy's book, he stated that the Algerian War was nonetheless one of the most violent uprisings to occur during the era of decolonization. What made it so were two irretractable dilemmas. The first derived from the Algerians' constitutional status as an integral part of France. As a result of the Algerian War of Independence, provoked much of the same ambient oppositions among the Frenchmen. The second dilemma arose from the presence in Algeria approximately 1.3 settlers known as Blackfeet, referring to their black leather shoes. Their privileged positions as French citizens combined with their discriminatory treatment of the indigenous Arabs and Berbers inflamed an already volatile colonial situation, while the threads of liberation movement posed to their livelihoods and property gave desperation in their determination to see it crushed. So you kind of see their need for their status and also for their harsh treatment, and that's one of the reasons why the Algerians wanted their independence from France. But as we go through these readings, kind of look through that and see what you could derive from the importance of this War of Independence as well. Through this week's studies, readings, and discussions, I hope it opens up your eyes to how decolonization has shaped Africa and the Middle East as we know it today. In some cases, the end of World War II eroded the strength of the colonial rulers, allowing the subjects to see the weakness. This created the opportunity for them to seize the independence and evict the colonial rulers. Take time to look at the case studies of the conflicts and see the importance of them for decolonization in Africa. Then make a note of how some of these events from the past are still occurring today, such as Israel and Palestine. Have a good week and let me know if you have any questions.